where hear so many people saying, I build this, the product is great. But I'm like, who told you they want this? Like, you could have built the best product in the world, but if no one cares about it or if it doesn't solve someone's problem where they're willing you to pay you for it, because I feel like that's a big thing about entrepreneurship, which is there's not a lot of validation unless you like hit it on the head and like you have the perfect idea and you're scaling and everything. I want to say the founder of Insurance comes on Shark Tank India now. But they basically did headlines, like they turned news articles into like these 5-second headlines, and it became a feed just to like read news. They ballooned from like 0 to 60 million users really fast. I don't know what they're at right now, but pretty big app.
I align with more of like authentic content creation, so I don't want to put out.
There's gonna be human in the loop, even though it's semi-automated.
Build a personal brand on LinkedIn because that's how I was able to actually get all my customers.
Hey guys. Welcome back to Funds and Founders. We have Suk on today. He's had an extensive career as a dev across various companies. I'm not going to go and name all of these. And I want to say we met Jan of last year at OD, one of the on deck cohorts where you were giving a couple talks. What struck me was you mentioned you had worked on 31 ideas and you're on to the next one, right? So I just wanted to dive into that. Why don't you give a quick intro into the audience of sort of your background and your journey so far, and then we'll head into it from there.
Hey everyone, so I am a developer from Toronto. I've worked at IBM and Apple and a couple other places as well, but I was never a good employee. Like I would always have like side products being built out, just like an itch that I've always had. The thing with like the number of projects really is I always have, like every technical developer, you would like come up with an idea, you build it out, and then you're like, okay, how do I sell it? And I would just never have the answer. So I did this like, 28, 29 different times. Eventually I was like, I need to stop doing this and learn how to sell because I clearly know how to code.
Yeah.
And then the last part of for the last couple of years now, I've been really like just hungry about learning sales skills and like founder-led sales, social, like what kind of works there. So I'm like a mix of like technical, but like somebody who can sell as well. And I kind of want everybody tech founder to have that skill set
100%.
too.
100%.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where hear so many people saying, I build this, the product is great. But I'm like, who told you they want this? Like, you could have built the best product in the world. But if no one cares about it or if it doesn't solve someone's problem where they're willing you to pay you for it, what is the point of that kind of software?
Yeah, and it's not even a product, right? Because a product should actually have a user on the other
100%.
side. It's a software. I guess it's like a lines of code is what
Yeah,
it really
yeah,
is.
yeah.
But that's pretty funny. I hear that all the time. And I get into that sort of motion as well, which is like, I think at the beginning, I did user interviews and I think I want to build this and I build this out and I'm like, oh, it's beautiful, but like nobody wants to use it.
Taking a quick step back, where would you say your journey started, your entrepreneurial journey? Would there be a moment in time where you could pinpoint and say, that's where I felt like you sort of took me on this path, or was it just a gradual shift?
No, I actually, in grade 10 was when I first started coding. I didn't actually know what coding was. And my buddy in shop class, like pulled up a program. He was writing a Python program because he was in a computer science class. And it was very simple. It just said like enter a name. And like, if you enter in your name, it'll just give you a message back. But the way he had like written the if statements, if I entered in my name, it would say something horrible, but if he entered his own name, it would be like something like super nice. So he did that to me, and then he just like went away. He's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna tell you like how I did this." That day, I just spent the whole day just being obsessed about how this is possible. It just didn't make sense to me. But that's kind of like where it started. Then I got into there's a program called Tkinter. There's Python, then Tkinter adds UI on top of Python because Python is just like
back in
UI associated with it. Yeah. So Tkinter actually adds a UI on top of a Python thing, built a calculator out of that. Then eventually the next summer, I started building out Android apps. And what I would do is I would build an Android app really quickly. And I would go to Best Buy, and because I had like ads put into the app, I would go to the Best Buy display models, and I would just like start like hitting the ads like no tomorrow. I think I was down to like 11 or 12 different ad accounts because they would find out based on the IP location that you have that all the clicks are coming from here. So the ad revenue would like jump up and then immediately go down.
How much
to zero.
do you remember a number?
It was like there was a couple times I had like $20 a day, which is like really, really good. Yeah. And I don't remember that I ever got a payout out of this, but I did eventually get a payout out of like, they were all free apps. I added a paid version of the app for like $1. And I remember getting a dollar, somebody paid $1, and you have 7 days for them to refund. And they didn't refund for 7 days.
Nice.
And I was ecstatic.
Sad. Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that. When I was an undergrad in India, a bunch of friends were like heavy into open source Android, doing mods, and like they used to contribute to a lot of open source Android mods. This one kid built an Android app to change the Android version on your phone. So when you go into settings, it would just, instead of showing you 5.8, it would show you the
Okay.
latest 7.0, and
Right.
got a lot of downloads. And then he built a Snapchat screenshotter. And then these two
Okay.
apps together, he had a lot of ads on them, and he would just plaster ads, and he'd be like, hey, help me fund my masters across. And
Mm,
I think, oh, before the apps, they would constantly keep getting banned, but he would just keep putting them up. I think he made like
yeah.
10 or 15 grand, like US dollars. This is 2012, so pretty decent amount. And like he did a lot with that cash, but it was just like that hacking mentality of like, well, hey, people want to screenshot Snapchats, so like let me figure out how to like hack into that and do it, right? But to your point, just reminded me of that, of like constantly clicking. He had all his friends like just download the app and like click the ads and stuff.
I mean, he was way more successful than I was, but that's a really good way of doing it. The other thing was, it's funny that you said like they would get banned. So like, if I remember when iPhone like 6 or 7 came out, I made an app called iPhone 6 Wallpaper. But and immediately I saw the chart just go vertical because it was gonna launch on the same day, and a couple of days later it got banned because you can't use the word iPhone in there.
Got it.
But the thing is that if you're like a cash grabbing mentality of like, I don't really care when it gets banned, I just want to like jump on the growth. That I think is like a much, it's not a lasting business, but that could be that's that hacking mentality of like when you're young, you're like, I don't care, I'll just like do whatever.
So you go from that, you're building these apps. What was your first idea that you like actually built and maybe semi pursued as a startup, or an idea, or like building a business from there?
Yeah, so I actually had 4 or 5 apps, and one of them ended up going to Canada's top 10 list, and
Nice.
that's there's like so many different categories, and if you're in the right kind of category and you've had enough downloads like upfront, you can get into those kind of lists very quickly. And once you're in there, you kind of just say that I was
Yeah.
in there for like a day, and then that just becomes a badge for you. That's actually ended up how I got my first internship as well. So I worked on that. It didn't go anywhere. And then a couple of years later, I built this app called Newsyon. What it was is Spotify for news. And that was something I was pursuing as a startup. I did a couple of like local school accelerators for
Nice.
that as well. What it did was, the idea behind it was, if you're like in the morning when you're walking to your train on your commute, you can put on your headphones and all of the day's news, it will convert it from text to audio, like summarize it, convert text to audio, and then you'll hear it and you'll be like up to date on
Area
your like
news, yeah.
news. Yeah, exactly. But the issue was that I was first using the models that used to be there like for voice. Terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. So you
No
wouldn't be able
11
to like
labs.
no 11 labs. So you couldn't hear this robot talk for more than like 5 seconds, much less like go 5 minutes about that. So I built this for a year and a half, had like a couple of like wins that we had from like the pitches that we did, but it didn't go anywhere. And I was selling it for like $5 a month, but to get around the issue of the robotic voice, I was recording all of the summaries myself, like with my voice. So every morning I would actually wake up,
Yeah.
take the
And
news for people, and I would record it myself. And it was super unscalable. Like there's no way I
yeah,
could have done that. And then with news, what happens is it's stale. Like the content is stale the
you got to
day
do it every day.
of. Exactly. So it's not like I was building up a content library. So for example, if I did this for books, something I recorded a year ago, it's still valuable. This news is not valuable at all. So anyways, I had that realization of like, bullet point one, why it wouldn't work is, man, I'm recording this every day and it's not adding to a cumulative volume. And number two is, people are only willing to pay at most $5 a month. So I wrote those on a board. And I was like, this is the reason why this wouldn't work. And I just shut it down. That habit of writing down bullet points where somebody can walk in and say, like, look at those things and be like, that's objectively true of
Yeah.
why this wouldn't work. That's a habit I continue to like. It's actually more valuable to me now as well, just because it's very easy to say, when should I pivot? Should I pivot now or like
Yeah.
pivot like later? But when you have two bullet points on a board that are so obvious to anybody walking in that like it's not going to work, that's when I think you should start thinking about pivoting.
Quick sidebar. When was the news app? What year was this?
I think this is 2017, 2018,
Okay. Have you
around
heard
that
of
time. Yeah,
InShorts in India?
I haven't.
So InShorts pretty large now. I want to say the
Okay.
founder of InShorts comes on Shark Tank India now. I don't know what their valuation is, but they
Right.
basically did headlines. Like they turned news articles into like these 5 second like headlines, and it became a feed just to like read news. And then they spun off and they have an InShorts video and an InShorts audio. I think I don't know what media formats they have, but basically what you're talking about. And this was like maybe 2012 or so, but they ballooned from like 0 to 60 million users really fast. I don't know what they're at right now, but pretty big app. I think they're still around. But just reminded me of that when you said Spotify
Yeah,
for news.
and
Because
all
again, some.
yeah, I
Go
was gonna
ahead.
say like that goes to show is like the ideas aren't like really worth that much. It's just like literally, can you execute on that?
100%, 100%. And that's why I feel like sometimes you're too soon, sometimes you're too late, but you gotta keep taking swings at bat until you find the right rhythm, the space, the market, and you gotta enjoy it as well. Like after a point, if you're building in a space that just bores the shit out of you, you're probably gonna make decisions that hurt the business and end up not succeeding, and then you're like, it was a bad idea. But if you look back, it was probably a good idea, you just didn't stick with it.
It's hard to. I think you there's like a million ideas around, and everybody. I think like you always look up like list of ideas, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna like try doing this, trying doing that, or like pull up Product Hunt and figure out, okay, what are the ones that are making money, and let's see if I can like build something like that. Issue with that, I think, is it's a little bit disingenuous. Like it's something that you don't believe in, and you don't even understand the mission behind the product either. Just because somebody is helping you schedule posts on LinkedIn, that's not the mission of the company. That's not there's no underlying problem you have identified or personally care about. What you're only looking at is a set of features, and you're like, if I do a set of features, I'll make that much money as well. That's generally not true. What you need to do is have a mission that you're running for, and then try different ways of making a solution to that. And sometimes that solution is like build like a consulting business. Sometimes it's like a SaaS that does like 10% of like what other apps do, but like that 10% is like really, really valuable.
100%.
And like iterations of that. That's why I think like sticking with it is a function of like how deeply you resonate with the mission of that thing. And if you don't, you're gonna quit pretty quickly.
100%, 100% agree. So you're building Spotify for news. What happened with it? Why'd you shut it down? Like, what was the end result of like building that? And what would you say was your one biggest learning from that venture?
We ran it for about a year and a half, wasn't able to get any customers. In fact, at the start of that journey, I actually did do like the mom test kind of interviews. I think the issue was I did it with my friends that I was working with at the time, and it was like, you would pay $5 a month, right? And they're like, definitely. Built the app,
Biased.
call them up. Yeah. Call them up. Where's that $5? And like, oh, I don't know if I really want to. And that was a solid learning, and something that's like a spiky thing in my career where I think about that and I'm like, oh, that was like such a bad time that I don't want to like repeat that mistake again. So ended up shutting that down, and I was doing a bunch of internships at the time. Poured my resources there, then tried to build create a game. There was a point where mobile games were doing really well, so I was always into building games. Made a few games. I was able to again make a game, but it wasn't fun because I didn't really have that sort of attachment.
You're not a
with it.
game designer, right? Like you can
Exactly.
execute on the game, but like there's a lot of fundamentals that go into game mechanics, storytelling, and like how you structure that.
Exactly. And the only way you understand those things is if you're like mission aligned to
Yeah.
that thing that you're working on. I wasn't. I was only, what I was doing was taking the features of another game, reskinning it somehow, and like, adding my own couple of like ideas on it. It was like a top-down shooter, like 2D game. So that was like a couple of the first ideas, and I kept building more and more things. But really, when I started like learning how to sell, that's when things started to work a little bit, where I was starting to make money and not just build something, put it on the shelf. But yeah, with Newsian, I don't know if we did anything with the code base. I think it's just like still in GitHub, like collecting dust. I did write a Medium case study though, or like a Medium report on like my whole process. I've had a lot of people reach out after I wrote that, just being like, hey, I read it, and it was like a pretty detailed account of like, this is what I did, then this is what I did, and then this is what I did, and this didn't work, and this is the reason why. I also filmed, by the way, like an ad as well so that was a good experience. But yeah, all that to say, all those things, the code collecting dust, but the insights, I left it on the medium.com
Nice.
website some people come from there every so often.
How do you think about, so you mentioned you went from like building to selling, then building, right? So how has your thought process or framework changed for pursuing ideas now?
I think about how to sell. Like that's my number one thing that I'm thinking about. So the way I started learning how to sell is I do this analogy of it is like when you go to a gym, you don't work out the full body. You work out, let's say, your legs first or like your arms first. So what I started doing was I treated my code as like a black box. What I did was I started selling like physical products. So I got honey jars of honey. It's a very specialty honey. It's a blueberry honey. It comes from Nova Scotia. My friend introduced me to it. So what my thought process was that this honey is selling on its own. Now, if I get the same honey and I can't sell it, the problem is not in the product. Because typically when you're like you're selling your own thing, you're like, I can't sell because the product is bad. But in this case, that actually can't be true because it's already selling in like
Yeah,
stores. People
100%.
already buying. So like the fact that it's not selling is actually a reflection of like what you can do. So with that, I bought like 10, 12 jars, and I was working like internship. So I would just like go around at everybody's desk at work and be like, yeah, I got
A jar.
a jar of honey. Yeah, do you want to buy? And I was getting it for I want to say $6 a jar, and we sold it for $10 a jar. And we did that first week. It worked really well. Then we got 60 jars. Yeah, and that worked really. We sold all 60. We would actually have like a small jar with a tasting spoon on our
Nice.
desk to be
So they
like,
taste
yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. Because it's blueberry honey. Nobody's like really heard of that. And so that was my first sort of like foray into like just
Nice.
like this exercise of like I want to sell and I want to learn how to sell. Then I started doing a cold emailing agency where I helped other people book calls. We weren't able to book any calls after on that. We booked calls for ourselves to get people on the call to talk to us about it. But then when we signed on somebody, we couldn't get anybody to like come in for our clients. Failed experiment, but again learned a lot and just like kind of
What do you think the gap was? Why do you think you were able to book for yourself versus for them?
I think it's just the offer is different, right? Because the offer for us was we would bring you 3 booked calls every month. So it doesn't matter how many emails we send out. It's a result-based thing. So it's not like we're going to send out 100 emails for you. It's whatever number of emails we have to send out to get you 3 booked calls. That would be the result of that. We didn't know how to do cold emails, but the issue with cold emails is like it's like a 1% response rate, and
Yeah,
like for a product that you don't even understand how it
100%.
works, and the people that were signing on were super early. They didn't know what product they were selling. They didn't know who the ICP was. So like it wasn't like it was a company that already had the sales stuff already figured out and they were hiring us to amplify. It was like find it for us.
It
And
comes down
so
to like, and I could be wrong, but like based on what you're saying, my understanding is the problem was a lack of a good offer, and it wasn't even that your systems were bad. Your systems were probably decent, like
fine.
infrastructure wise. Were you selling the right offer to the right ICP, or were you just like spray and pray, right? So,
Yeah, we
but
were
that makes
just
sense. Yeah,
we were signing anybody up that would say yes to the offer, and
makes sense.
typically
Yeah.
the people that say yes the fastest are like, I don't know how to do this. These guys seem like they know how to do this, so let's just like go with these
100%.
guys.
It's one of
But
those like you're especially when you're running your own business or startup, you sort of offload anything that could be scary, right? Like to your point, if someone comes and tells me they're the best marketer, I don't understand marketing. So first I can't even evaluate this person, but then it feels like I'm plugging a hole I have, even if I'm not plugging it well. But yeah,
exactly. So we would sign these people on, and then we couldn't deliver, and we would have to refund the money because our offer was 3 book calls
but you
or
couldn't get called.
refund. Yeah, exactly. And so
I mean, at
that
that
was a
point, I would
painful
have just found
experience.
like distant relatives to book a call with, and we're like, "Hey, hop on the call.
Yeah,
I'll buy you Starbucks or some shit, right?"
you would want to do that. The other thing is it's also depending on we wanted to go a step further, and that's the other thing that I think about now when evaluating ideas is like how can you deliver the actual thing that the person wants. So in this case, They don't want just book calls, but like they want customers. The issue happens is as a service provider, if I give them booked calls, like if I do all my work correctly, that means I've delivered them book calls, but then it's up to them to like take that book call now and
And
get a
convert.
sale out of it. Yeah. But the thing is, if they don't, and if they're not competent enough, all of my work goes to waste. Exactly. They assume that it's because the leads that you sent them were bad, and they don't understand that maybe it's them, or like, maybe it's a combination of them. But you don't want to be in a place where you're doing the work, but you're not getting the benefit of the work.
100%. It's so I have a software agency on the side. I have a team in India, and we build apps for people. And sometimes I've had customers, and these are like super early stage, where they're like, "Hey, no one's using it." I'm like, "I get that. I can help you. I have ideas, but it's not my fault." Or like I'm not on the hook for you getting paid users.
Mhm.
I built you what you asked for. We went through, I told you like, hey, maybe you should do ABC like from a product perspective. But I hate it when someone sort of blames me for an app that doesn't work, which I don't think that's my fault. But again, to your point, when they use it, the expectation is that, hey, you just like, you're on the hook for everything. It's easy to pass on blame, but I 100% understand what you're saying.
I think that happens in services business quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm not just not a fan. I just hate it. I that's actually one of the reasons I don't want to do services businesses, even though they make a lot of money. But like you've like there's these kind of scenarios that come up where it's not even your fault. You've done the work and still you're not getting the recognition for it. Whereas if you had a product, yeah, it's typically like up to the user to like use the product because it's a tool.
And the other thing I don't like about service agencies is you're always capped on time. Like your scalability is always affected. Either you raise your prices, that means you're moving to a different customer class, which is good, or you're just capped on hours. You can only do so much work, and then you're inherently capped on like how much your profit is, which if you're fine with, that's a great model. I've been thinking a lot about like service plus SaaS ideas in businesses where you're powered by SaaS, but the service on top is sort of the, the 10x ROI that the company gets because you really know how to use it versus something else, right? But anyways, sweet. But yeah, you were saying.
No, I was saying, so I've been doing services for plus SaaS as well. I think that's a great model that you said, which is it lets you with a SaaS, it lets you be scalable, but then like services on top. That means you can charge a lot of money for like a specific set of clients. There's two other models in this kind of thing of like how you can merge SaaS and services. You could actually have a SaaS that's not public. So like you just have an
Yeah, yeah.
internal tooling that makes it super easy to do XYZ. So maybe you have an internal SaaS that lets you send 1 million emails over a day. Instead of giving that to the customer and like making them pay $100, $50, whatever, you just say it's a 5K a month offer. We will handle all the things for you. But then you turn around and you have the app do that.
Yeah.
That gets away from your scalability thing because like the app is doing all of the work.
100%. 100%.
But you can charge a lot more because before you wouldn't charge 100, now you can charge 5K. World of a difference, and you have scalability in both. That's one. The second one I was playing around with is using the services revenue to fund the SaaS. So you do consulting and like you get the design partners, you like actually help them personally how like a person would, and then you take that learnings, take that money and build a product that would automate that same thing and then give it to your customers, and then you go about now building a product company versus a services company.
I like the second one. I've been trying to do that for 7 years. The problem ends up being what's the right split of resources to put towards the product? And also, is my job now selling the product or selling the services or building the product, right? Like, there's always a split there. And I've had a couple ideas that if I just put a little bit more like marketing sales bandwidth behind, I know I could have sold and like gotten customers because I've seen other people do it worse than what we built and started after when we built. But for some reason, there was either just not enough conviction, or the first couple sales calls I had went bad, or there was something that was like, maybe it's not a big enough opportunity. Maybe I should just shelf it, right? But to your point, it was always a split of like, okay, where does my time go? But I'm leaning heavily toward doing something like what Google does, which is 20% of my team's time is just ideating on stuff, and we will be cognizant about just like putting stuff out there, getting someone to use it and say it's shit or say I don't care or like whatever and move on. But I have like probably 10 of these that I just haven't even tried to put in front of a user because of like some connotation of like, Am I sure I want to ask them to do like, like, to your point of like just like that fear of
The way
rejection
I've
maybe, but yeah.
the way I've done it is I cap myself off at services revenue. So I'll say 5K services revenue. That's all I need because like you mentioned, the more services contracts you add, the more it takes away your time, and then you
100%.
can't put mental space on the products. So I try to make an equation of like how much money do I need for this product thing, and how can I spend the least amount of time on the services, like the delivery part of it. And if it's like, hey, max 2 clients, that's perfect actually, because now you can go on LinkedIn and say, I can only take 2 customers, and like if these are the requirements, if that's you, message me back, and you're not in this rigmarole of like signing up
Yeah,
100
100%.
customers. You just need two. The 80% of your time actually is spent on the product itself. I think that's the right mix. The way I tried doing it was I was doing this personally myself. The delivery, even for 2 people, took a lot of my time. And so I had an account executive that would actually like offload that work off of me. Because in services, you're like tied to the customer so much, you kind of end up being involved somehow. And it just doesn't work. I think the
Also,
right mix is
also depends on whether they hired you for you or the services, or you plus the services. Because there's a very big difference in, hey, I'll do X for you and I have subcontractors and they'll execute and like you don't talk to me. And there's a big difference of like, hey, you're personable. I like talking to you about whatever we're doing. Whether you get it done by someone else or not, I don't care, but like you're the reason I'm doing this. And that I think changes that dynamic a lot, to your point of like, are you actually on the hook for the service, or is it more your persona that they're hiring?
and it gets tricky. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, if you're running this kind of model, you want to be a product company. You don't want to be a services company. So I think like if you're running this kind of strategy, you have to say that you have to say the verbiage that you use, which is I will work with you, but I'm gonna get the work done by somebody else. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
And like make that contract upfront, visible, transparent, so that when you take yourself out of the equation, it's not odd.
Going back to your journey real quick. So you're ideating on these ideas. What's the next big idea that hit? And also, if you could briefly just talk through how many ideas in are you and what's keeping you going? Because I feel like that's a big thing about entrepreneurship, which is there's not a lot of validation unless you like hit it on the head and like you have the perfect idea and you're scaling and everything. So what keeps you going? Like there must be something that forces you to keep trying out these ideas one after the other. And like you said, 35 ideas in now. So like just talk about that a
Yeah,
little bit, that mentality, that psyche. Like how do you get yourself in the zone?
I'm actually killing one idea right now. I'm in the middle of it, and then I'm like building up another one.
The
The
LinkedIn one?
mission, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So the mission that I'm on is, and this is like roughly the space I want to like build for, is B2B, and I want to solve go to market. That's my mission, because I believe that with vibe coding and all these AI coding agents coming in, a lot of people are going to be able to build code, like write code and
100%.
like make apps. In that sort of world, the only differentiator is your branding or your go to market. How you're going to market is the only differentiator, because I can just clone your app like tomorrow if I wanted to. And so, and like the current marketing, the solutions for go to market are like paid ads, too expensive. You got to spend at least 10K to Meta, and then you'll get somewhere. SEO, you have to wait 6-7 months. Then you have like organic social, creating content, and then one more like word of mouth referral, that kind of stuff. But it takes a while to kick up. So or cold email, 1 to 2% response rate. So these are the options that you have, and none of them are great. And so I want to solve the go-to-market thing for people. For Engine, the company that I built, the last year I was building a blogging solution. Like that's why
Yeah.
I know so much about SEO and blogging and we chatted about this as
Yeah.
well, where, an AI blog writer, but it writes like authentic content. Like
Yeah.
that was the backbone of it. We got to like 120K ARR. And when I look back at it, there was 2 issues with it. One is that the sales cycle, no, sorry, not the sales cycle, but marketing is very dependent on ROI. So
100%.
if SEO gives you ROI after 7 months, marketers are getting fired within 3 months. So I'm like reselling the same account over and over again. That's one. And number two is it is a business that needs to exist. I don't think that business needs me though. Like I don't particularly feel that great, because what the customer kind of wants is an automated blogging solution. That's what the customer wants. That's something I don't align with. I align with more of like authentic content creation. So I don't want to put out,
There's
I
gonna
can,
be human in the loop. Like, even though it's semi-automated, it's gonna be
yeah.
like I'm not just gonna click and forget it.
And so It's just like something I wasn't aligned with. I wanted to be like a little bit more authentic, where like I captured your ideas and like put it into a blog, but I just couldn't find the right mix for that. So long story short, shut that down, and I went back down to zero, like refunded everybody zero, turned off everything, databases cleared, everything. And now I'm helping people create, like, build a personal brand on LinkedIn, because that's how I was able to actually get all my customers for SEO last year. And building in public is like very close to my heart, because it's just like a muscle that I've built up now. Again, with LinkedIn, it's still for B2B and it's still for go to market. In that sort of space, now I built out a video solution that like asks you a question, you respond to it, and it converts that into content. That's what I was testing out. It's not really a hit, so that's the one I'm turning down. And now I'm building like a Chrome extension that keeps you consistently posting. So it's just like it's Duolingo for LinkedIn. It just keeps a streak of like how many times you posted in the week, and if you're keeping your streak. And that's like hitting the consistency problem of like, hey, I want to post, but I can't be consistent. But roughly, that's from the strategy point of view of like what keeps me going is I have that B2B go to market as my mission, and I just want to try a bunch of different solutions to hit that problem. And that's what keeps me going, because I struggle with that as well. So even if I were to build another startup like 5 years from now, I'm going to run into this go to market issue again. Rather than waiting at that time to solve it, I want to solve it today and give it to everybody.
Makes sense.
that's the idea behind like coming up with different product concepts.
So how long did it take you to get to this point, right? So like from building Spotify for news where you had an idea, you're just like vibe coding, well, in previously coding versus now vibe coding. But how long, like just briefly, if you want to cover like whenever you started, I don't remember the year you said, to like
Yeah.
today you are now mission driven where you're trying ideas. What was that framework shift? How long did that take?
It wasn't, it's funny, like it's not something that I've like, I'm cognizant of that now when I look back at in fact, when I put that Excel sheet together of like all the ideas I
Yeah.
tried and like what year I tried it in, I look back at it and it's all saying something like investing advice for SaaS founders, or it's like whatever for SaaS founders. Like it's so like I've always had, maybe it's like I'm building it for myself, kind of, because at the time that I was building that investing for SaaS founders thing, I was trying to learn how to like invest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a gradual a shift. So the New Zealand thing was in 2018, a couple ideas in 2019, and then I was working full time, so I stopped working after that. And then really during COVID is when I started picking up again.
Nice.
And just working more on that. 3 years ago is when I went full time on the startup stuff. Before that, I was doing like splitting my time between job
Nice.
and building something on the side. And the way I made that jump was I thought to myself, like, if I could make 1,000 MRR, that would make me a jump. And I think I got that in November-ish 2021. I hit that goal. I was working at Saks Fifth Avenue. I was getting good money, but I'm like, if I stick with this right now, I'm gonna continue making that same amount of money, but I'm not gonna learn anything. I really want to like learn how to like sell. I know I can code the same thing again. And so I was like, okay, let me just like stop doing this, because I need to learn how to do sales calls. And like if somebody's like have a sales call with me at 11 a.m. in the morning, I'm gonna be working. So I can't literally do that. And so I need to quit to like further my startup goal and like expand my learnings. And I'm glad I did, because how to do founder-led content, founder-led sales, like the sales calls, how do you put an offer together. Those are things nobody will teach you. You just have to like learn over time. And the way to do it is do it and fail and like do it again. So that's the other thing that keeps me going, which is like, I want to learn these things. Only way to learn it is not at a job, but do it.
100%. I agree. Does failure hit you in terms of like when you're shutting down an idea? What goes through your mind? Like, because personally, every time I've like shelved an idea, it's been a little sad, but I've never gotten to the point of getting revenue in the door. And so maybe it's easier for me to shut an idea down, but I want to say there's like some connotation with like, hey, it's working, someone's paying. Do I keep it going? Do I just kill it? Like, how does that go? Well, like, what's your thought process there?
Like the first 28, 29 ideas made no money. So like I think like when I was a bit younger, it's like it was fine killing it an idea, and I wasn't serious about it as well, right? I already had a job, so you kill an idea, well, things are still the same.
Yeah.
It wasn't making any money, and I'm still getting my full-time paycheck. But this time became the 120K ARR product, it did affect me a lot because that's how I got into Techstars. So like I got into
Yeah.
Techstars as a solo founder using that idea, and it was making enough money. But I read somewhere, and I wonder if it was Paul Graham that said this, which is it's actually hard. Like a slow death is the worst death. You know what I mean? You can see that it's not growing as fast, and like people are leaving. People don't quite love it, but like some people are like, it's okay. I can use this. So like, there's a couple of customers coming in every week, and you see some interest, and you're like, I can't shut this down. This person just signed up. But then you go back to them and you say, how much do you like it? And they're like, it's fine. So like, when I read that sentence, I felt like I was in that phase where like, it's like super slow going. Sure, it could be a function of like, eventually it will pick up. Sure. I'm at a point in time where I can make a big bet. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. So I can just like take that big shot and see where it lands. And then at some point, the blogging solution is always going to be an issue. And it is an issue that should be solved. But like, I don't think like this is not the right time for me to solve that right now.
Yeah.
That's always going to be available as an option to me later down the line. Services revenue, again, that's going to be always available to me. I know how to like get customers. I know how to like deliver. There's something riskier I can do right now. Want to have four options available to me in my life later down the line. I want to be able to wake up and either write a book, give a talk at like Google or something like that, get a job, or build a startup. So all those options have to be available to me. To get to that kind of a point, I need to do something. You look at the guy that's talking in front of you, you're like, what has he done? And then you have to point to something that I've done that I can like speak about, my insights, my hardships and stuff like that. And that's what I'm building on right now, because that's all the failures that I'm running into are just going to be a chapter in the eventual book I write.
Yeah.
So in that case, I'm not looking for like a major win, even especially actually the learnings, the things that didn't go right make for a much better story. So I relish in that fact of like, this is just going to be an amazing talk that I give one day of like how I failed doing this one thing. That being said, the latest product that I killed that was making revenue, it was very demotivating. I didn't think it was demotivating when I made the announcement of like shutting it down, but when I hit the delete on the database, I was like, this is like a year and a half, 2 years of like just work of like even thinking about it, not even building. And that was tough. But the way I was able to bounce back is by understanding like what the underlying reason for the demotivation was. It's the fact that something was here and now I'm at zero. So I'm like worse off with where I was at, but I want to get here. So like, you're almost like, oh man, I was like kind of like almost halfway to the goal. Like, why didn't I just keep going? Why did I have to go down to zero? And that's what the underlying issue is. You're comparing yourself to you 2 weeks ago who had better stats, maybe revenue, customers, stuff like that. But I think you just have to like, I just reprogrammed myself to think of like, if I can wake up every day and like work on a product or like a Figma screenshot, whatever makes me happy, and I can roughly get to like a 5K MRR goal, that's just my goal. I'm not looking at the 500K, a million goal, because I'm going to trust myself that when I'm at the 5K MRR goal, that I'll have the foresight to take that 5K to 50K, from 50K to a 500K. I don't have to right now have a plan on my notebook of like how to get to 500K, because that will kill you.
That's a really good segue into what we were chatting about before we started recording, which was how do you think about VC versus bootstrapping versus you've done Techstars, you raised money, so technically there is like some investor pressure into Engine, whatever, I don't know how much that is. How do you think about that when pursuing this? So you briefly covered that you're focused on the 5K goal. You're not necessarily focused on the trajectory afterwards, but just briefly touch upon like that VC versus bootstrap versus where does your head lie in all of this?
I think it just comes the money that when you didn't have money, you are like, man, I'm only like limited by money, because if I had money, I would do XYZ things. When you have money, you understand that like, even if you have a lot of money, that doesn't get you closer to getting paid customers, because like just because you have money doesn't mean that like paid customers are coming through the door or you have a fantastic product out of the gate. And that's a learning I've had, because I'm like, man, why am I still like in the dirt, like wrestling with a bunch of different ideas? if I have money, the short answer is even if you have $1 million in your bank account, you still need to build something that people will pay for or use. And there's no shortcut for that. The way I think about it, I think having money puts a lot of pressure on you to, again, have that plan figured out on day one. Because presumably people are going to ask you a question of like, well, you're doing this thing. How does it
Get to
become a
XYZ,
billion dollar
yeah.
question? We're all guessing. The only thing that's it's actually doing, helping, like making your brain be like, oh, we have to get there and we're not there yet. How long? How long? How long? That's the worst thing that you can do because you don't know that answer. You're just like, kind of like making up on the spot, and like sometimes you just give up because you're like, I read 3 studies online and they just say that this market is the worst market ever, and like there's no way I can do this. And the third thing is that I think you end up start building like something big. You build a platform versus a tool. Platform does 10 different things. A tool does one thing. When you're like pressured by money, I think you're like forced to sort of build a platform. What you will end up like understanding is like when you go to customers, they all, from all the 10 things that you provide, they really care about like the one thing. But you build like 100 different things around it, and like now you have to maintain them. There's no point. So when I was the product that I'm shutting down now,
Yeah.
I built out a platform. It records you, it comes up with ideas for you, it then edits your video for you, it puts subtitles, it like renders out the video and then publishes it for you as well. There's like a 10 things that it does. All people want is as simple as subtitle putter upper on video.com. But it's not exciting. Like if you pitch that as a vision on your slides, it's not like, oh, this thing could be $1 billion thing. There's no like, it's not obvious enough. But I think you have to start off with a point solution of like this is the one killer use case that is repeatable. It's people will pay money for it, and it's like pain is deep enough. And if it's putting subtitles on videos is like the worst thing ever, and I don't know how to do it, and if there was an easy tool that I could pay like $20 a month for, I would do it. Build that. And then trust yourself that once you figure out the subtitle, put it up for video.com, that you know how to turn that into a platform to like help maybe creators do 5 other things in there eventually. And then that opens up the door to like the $1 billion platform, whatever. But doing that on day one is a very difficult thing. And like I find it, if I start thinking like that, it makes me not want to do it at all.
Because you're now adding all this extra baggage that you
Yeah,
don't know if you
exactly.
even want to or like at that point. But yeah.
Yeah, it's so much, and like the build, like the testing loop becomes such longer, like a lot longer as well, even with vibe coding, because you're still reaching out to people, vibe coding, and then showing them the solution, and like then taking your feedback and figuring out, should I continue building this or should I call it? Vibe coding might be 2 days. Process is like month, 2 months long
100%.
because you're reaching out to
100%.
people. Yeah, people, try to book a call today, somebody will book a call 2 weeks from now, and then now you have to wait 2 weeks to get a chat with them. So I think like, yeah, all that to say, don't think about bootstrap or VC. Build that like point solution that solves the killer problem. Get to like the single metric. So number of usage, retention maybe after a week, to determine if this is actually working. Add a paid plan, see if that's working, get to 5K. Then what's going to happen actually is make a post on like Twitter, and you'll have VCs reaching out to you. You'll have like people being like, hey, take my money or whatever, right? So like opportunities will open up for you, but you're doing things in the right order, which is like build something that like could work, and then people are coming to you, versus pitching the solution and then eventually building it and trying to find out customers.
The thing I don't like about that other one is like I had a friend who just went to SF, and there's a whole vibe there where people are just raising like seed. Okay, 6 months I need a Series A. Okay, 9 months I need this. There are people who are just raising money constantly on vanity metrics. Like you have a pipeline, but no one's converting. You have a waiting list, but it's really small. But you still raise 4 million and you're almost out. So you now need to raise more to potentially convert this pipeline. What did you spend the 4 million on? Like, where did this money, like, I mean, to that point of like, because that's what's highlighted, those are the stories you see, that's what people glorify as success, is these titles and raising and all these VC companies and having these brand names. A friend of mine just got out of one of the bigger accelerators. I'm trying not to like say who it is. And he's like, I have 2 year runway and I don't need to raise. To that point of like, do I now spend to potentially market and acquire and maybe get there? Or do I just build at my own pace and give myself 2.5 years to maybe get to whatever goal is? But the pressure is like, oh my God, you raise, we need return this, you got to raise the next round. And that's where I feel like there's a little bit of a lack in just people talking about this approach of, like you're saying, aim for the 5K. Don't aim for the 100, the 50, the 500. Aim for the 5 and then figure it out. That's not the story that people talk about. That's not what people highlight as success. So you don't want to go online and say I'm a founder who just makes 1,000 a month, because like it's looked down upon.
You open up LinkedIn, and that was actually the biggest source for my anxiety, which is you open up LinkedIn and everybody's like, oh, X company raised Y money without taking their dog to the pet shop. What, like, you know, like the most mean, while brushing my teeth, I was able to raise X amount of money, and here's my playbook. And then you sort of like thinking, why can't I do the same thing? Because
100%.
like, you know, why am I not that? You kind of have to shut down that noise completely, because there's going to be these stories every day popping up, but you're never going to know 5 years from now what happened to them. Most of the times things didn't work out because they weren't able to find XYZ. That's not going to be a new story that gets put up.
100%.
It's going to be a new company that raised the money.
No VC talks about their failures. They all talk about there's 100x, 10x, 1000x baggers. No one talks about the ones that fail. But I feel like that's what needs to be highlighted, is just understand the path you're getting into. To your point, you're mission driven, you have an idea, you're willing to start and stop ideas. Not everyone's cut out for that. Not everyone has the luxury to like just be in the grind. But that's what
Yeah.
it takes a lot of times, right? So I feel like
100%.
that's one thing that's not talked about enough, is just if you're young and you come to me and say, I want to like do a company so I can get that 100 million payday, my recommendation is always just go get a tech job and stay there for 10 years and you'll have more money than starting a company. But you know, who am I?
Yeah.
I haven't done my own thing yet, so it's false feedback, but yeah.
No, that's so funny, because I say the same thing. I say if you want to make $1 million, just again get a 100K job for like 10 years and you'll have 1 million. Like that's the way to do it. It's difficult to say that like that's the truth with startups. I think like raising money just gives you more shots at the goal. And like that's what I am focused on. I have money for like my living expenses, and that's I've forecasted what my runway is. I'm gonna keep taking shots to hit my mission. What it just gives me is like I don't have anxiety around should I go get a job because I don't have
Yeah.
money and I can't eat, I can't pay my rent. I think that's a much healthier way of doing.
But then also understand that you have to take those shots at goal. It's not about raising the money and then preparing yourself to raise your next round. And that's what I feel like, not all the founders, but a lot of founders I talk to who've raised, like, yeah, I'm going to open a roundup. I'm like, but why? Why? You just raised a round. Like, you don't need to start prepping for your next round. But that's, again, how the game is played. So I get it. I'm not saying don't do it. But yes, it's just a pet peeve that I have when I talk to founders who just talk about raising all the time. One pivot I wanted to take was, you're deep into all the tools and the AI and everything. And what's your stack right now? What are you sort of testing out, using? What's your bare bones stack to like get something up and running and out and working for customers?
So Fathom Video is my favorite meeting note taker. I've tried all 25, 26 of them, and I use Fathom to like record calls like this one. If I'm doing a sales call, for example. So I use that. I use Replit for coming up with like a bare bones sort of an idea. The only thing I don't like about it is it doesn't give you Next.js code. It gives you React code, which is hard to work with. And like all my templates are built in Next.js, so I can't even use what they have. Once I have something that's like working Replit, I'll bring it to Cursor and I'll ask it, can you convert this React code to Next.js? And then I'll like do the whole thing with the agent mode. Plausible is for like analytics.
Okay.
That's a big one. Oh yeah, V0 for like coming up with feature ideas, or Claude actually. So I paid for Claude just now, and I find it gives me better feature ideas than V0 does. So I'll go to Claude and say, and I have a project for Claude, and I'll say, your product manager, this is the problem I'm trying to solve, and like give me three, four different ideas that could solve this, and then make the UI for each of them. And so that's my sort of like solution discovery method. Then I'll take those, show it to the customer, and see if they like it or not, and like
Nice.
what do I feel about that. And then I want to say that I vibe code after that. I actually don't. I sit down and like figure out what are the things I need to build, because it's very easy to just say, oh, Cursor recommended I build this thing, so I guess that we're building that thing. I use just like Command L in Cursor to think, like do the things that I don't want to do. For example, like error handling. So I don't want to like fill the whole function with like do this, do that, check this, check that, check that. I write the main function, tell cursor, check this for where there could be exception handling that could be added. So I use it as like a partner for like
Nice.
for
Makes
coding
sense. Yeah.
versus like having it come up with features and just like add those into the thing. So I'm like more cognizant of like the thing that I'm building, and I try to build the smallest thing because it's easier to like test with people. But that's like all the tools that I use.
Nice, pretty cool. I think I saw a post you said where you were talking about limiting deployments to Vercel plus DigitalOcean. I'm pretty sure that was you.
I'm not sure that was me.
Okay, I may be confusing. I don't know what they were saying was they're not going to use AWS because they want to wait till you use credits.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
so like you
Yes.
were thinking, that was you, right? I'm not missing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you were talking about how you limit deployments to Vercel plus using a DigitalOcean server until you actually leverage AWS credits. But
So
anyways,
I
that was
did.
just an interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I did talk about AWS credits, but like not to that
Okay,
angle.
that's fine.
But
Yeah,
so I think like this is one of the early mistakes that I did that I think a lot of founders should be aware of. AWS and all these things will give you 10K credit, 100K credit, but you shouldn't redeem them because
yeah,
all you
timeline.
have, yeah, you have a timeline of a year exactly, and all you need is a database at the start. You don't have any like insane scaling issues. If you redeem it and then you're using it for like a $20 database instance, there's no point. You just wasted all that money. And then on the other side, on the extreme side, is if you're like, oh, I have 10K credit, let's run up the bill. It's like, use this service, use that service, and then you start becoming dependent on that. Then when the expiry date comes in, you're on the hook for that bill, and you have to turn down those services now. Or if you were using it, then figure out the alternatives for that.
Yeah.
But you're immediately then on the hook for that, 5-6K bill per month. And I thought that was such a like good trap by AWS being like, we'll just give you like credits. But it's something that like people shouldn't redeem quickly. They should wait at least a year, 2 years, pay the $20 for the database, whatever. It's all good.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. I feel like we're getting to a point where everything's becoming subscriptions. Like it's really easy to fall into like, oh, let me use this service plus that service. And like it adds up real quick. Like as you start tacking on like all these AI tools and like some chatbot and this and customer service and everything, like it could be it does not necessarily a small amount, but like when you get to like, to your point, you're now dependent on this to do it. Is it the best solution? Could you have done something that gets you 80% of the way there for much cheaper because you just set up an API somewhere? I feel like not enough people think about that. I don't know whose Twitter post I was reading, but some successful exited founder said that every founder should spend at least 5 to 7% of their time understanding finances, taxes, your cash flow, understanding where you're burning and spending and how that affects sort of your just bigger business model. Because there's so many small things as a founder that you can do to save yourself. I have a friend who just raised 800K. It's just sitting in, I'm like, just put in a high yield savings account. Like it's no brainer for you to take that 4.5% that you're getting right now. It's free. It's literally free money. But they're like, I don't have the headspace. I'm like, you don't have the headspace to click 4 buttons and put it into high yield savings account to make an extra 24K this year because you're not going to burn your cash. Like, I mean, small things like that just add up. Maybe that 24K is make or break for you when you need it, right? Again, just random example, but I feel like there's all these small things that help and add on over time.
Yeah, and you can actually count that as your like, what was that? That's ARR that you can add on because you're that's money that's coming in for free, right? So 24K divided by 12, that's what you're making every month. That's
Yeah.
added to your MRR.
Yeah.
Like, and if you have extra subscriptions and you take them out, you're suddenly making more money. And like that's so like you got to think about that
Yeah.
way. But I can't empathize with like not having headspace because you're
Yeah.
like, man, the product has 0 customers, so like I think like that's where my head is needed most at. But I guess you got to force yourself.
One more thing I wanted to ask you is what's your support system? So I like asking everyone this on every episode where you've been grinding, putting these ideas out, you went all in after COVID. What's your support system? What allows you to just be constantly on the grind and not let it affect you like physically, mentally, health-wise?
I have a strong group of people, like founders that I've known. I mean, On Deck was fantastic.
Yeah.
So On Deck, where we met, I think the people that come to On Deck are like highest quality people I've met. So I have like a few people that I always message, call. They're in the city with me in Toronto, so I like meet up with them. That's one. When I was at Techstars, we had these momentum meetings or KPI meetings where you sort of share what you did this week and what the plan for the next week is. We, like the cohort mates, just got a little bit closer closer because of that. And now we do one every week as well. So that's another one. And then the last one is just personal friends that I randomly will call up, and they're startup founders as well. So like it's just easy to just like you're
Relate
like,
with.
have you? Yeah, exactly. You're like, are you seeing all these like posts that are coming up on? Um, that are coming up on LinkedIn, and are you seeing all these people raising money and they're all like BS? And you're like, yeah, it is, and like you just kind of like talk about that kind of stuff. And I had a founder that I was my friend I was talking to last night, and he was going through a tough time, so I was able to help. And when I was going through a tough time, he was able to help. So just like having, I think, founder friends that are at the same stage as you are.
100%.
If you have like somebody who's like super successful, I don't know if they can relate to the same challenges that
100%.
you are.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been toying with this idea of doing like a founder dinner series where, to your point, I get 6 to 8 people who are in the similar stage right now in the same room. Because
Yeah.
what I've noticed is it's really hard for people to be vulnerable online and in public. Like, I'll get people on the show who, before the show, are telling me how depressed they are, and then they're like perfectly fine because they want to, and I won't like probe you to talk about it on the show. And then they'll tell me how some shit happened with their co-founder, like this, or they had to sell their house. Like there's all these random things, but
Yeah.
for some reason, people don't want to be associated with that vulnerability online because maybe it makes you feel weaker. I don't know. And I feel like it's much easier to be in a closed space. The reality is, it is very hard to build a company. Like, I know I'm saying this from a point where I haven't actually built my own company yet. I don't know if you call the service agency a company, but
I think I would.
but I have talked to so many people who just will tell me the reality of what they're going through. And I'm like, hey, let's come on the show. It's like, oh yeah, it's great. I raised money. Yeah, going like we had some hiccups, but like I just see that there's some disconnect here. But it's
Yeah.
actually pretty hard to build a company, build it right, successfully, and be happy. And maybe you have a family on the way and like do all these other things. Like life doesn't stop when you're building a company. So at some
I
point
think it's
we'll figure it
also,
out.
yeah, but I think like that's an opportunity for somebody to be like open and like open
Yeah.
up. When we say things like authentic, or somebody is like vulnerable, or like, somebody who's trustworthy, it's typically the people that are like sharing their realities, and not just like, they killed it again, woohoo for our team, and like, this person, this person, this person. But it's people that are like, it doesn't go great. I did try this and I did try that and it didn't really
Yeah.
work out. But like this did work out. So like, take from this what you think that you can take for your own stuff. I think if you do more of that, that is the secret sauce to being more authentic and relatable. I think that this is gonna get worse and worse with AI, because are you into SpongeBob, or like have you watched SpongeBob
I've
before?
watched it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not
there's
like an
an
avid
episode where
fan, but I'm aware, yes.
Okay, so there's an episode where SpongeBob is like, he's a square, right? But then he starts like saying very normal phrases, and he starts like curving out his edges, and he
Okay.
becomes like a sort of like a very
Circle.
smooth surface. So like that's what I think about when somebody like always shares wins. They become like more and more of this like a shiny product of themselves.
Yeah.
But what you actually need is a spiky version of you that's like going through a bunch of troubles and like sharing all that stuff around. I always find that sort of meme, the screenshot, funny. But yeah, but with AI, it rounds out those edges more and more. Put into ChatGPT and say, I struggle with this thing, I struggle with that thing, and it'll make a beautiful poem about you, winning somehow.
Yeah.
But if you can be a beam of relatability, you will stand out even more in the next couple of years.
Nice. I like it. Last question is, what's the current AI thing that's been blowing your mind? What's the latest innovation where you're like, oh, this unlocks so much for me?
Yeah, it's gonna be a basic answer, but it's cursor, honestly. It's like something that's like so ingrained into my workflow that I've never gone back to using the GitHub Copilot,
Yeah.
or like, or any of the other models either. It's just like the things that I don't want to think about, like I was mentioning, like the error handling,
Yeah.
and like make sure that like I have my try catch finalities like properly put in. Those are kind of things I don't want to think about, and I just want to think about the product itself and like the way the features work. And Cursor just like hides that, or like abstracts that away from me. The amount of times I use it's kind of crazy, and the fact that I use it without even thinking about it. So,
Yeah, makes sense. That's cool.
It's cursor.
The unlock for me was I've been using Claude with MCPs for the last two
Okay.
days. There's just a bunch of random stuff where I'm like, hey, I want to scrape some data from here, from there. And I've just been prompting my way to like, because I'm trying to find founders to reach out to, like, to get on the podcast. And there's a bunch of newsletters that highlight a lot of different stealth, not stealth, whatever. And I've just been scraping all these LinkedIn profiles and what they're doing and when they came out of stealth just by writing prompts. And like that unlock of Claude plus an MCP plus a Supabase connection, I'm just telling Claude, hey, design a table, create the table, go scrape the data, store it in the table, and just keep doing it. Like it
Interesting.
just hits a token
Interesting.
length, and so I just keep saying continue. That's the only like, and then after a point, a chat window gets too long, so I need to like have summarized instructions. But I just go start a new one. I'm like, hey, you did this, go do this, connect here, and just keep scraping for me. And like that's been a big unlock of like just because I know how to code, but when I was trying to do Claude to do Python code to let me run the code, fix the error,
Right.
the HTML output's different. There's too many loops where it would just keep breaking and missing data. But here I'm like, hey, you missed the data. He's like, oh, sorry about that. Let me just go get that data because you have it scraped. Super simple things where I feel like I'll see what other MCPs are out there, but that's been pretty cool.
What's the scraping MCP that you had?
Firecrawl.
Oh, okay. So you're doing like publicly available data.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least
Okay.
right now.
Interesting.
Where should people reach out? What should you plug? And then I'll cut that and put in the beginning as well, because retention's like fucking 5 minutes nowadays. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, where should people reach out? What do you want to plug? Where and what can we link for you and show for you?
Yeah. Find me on the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/in/SSSAINI. If you send me a text there, I'll always respond. So that's one. The other one is if you're building a LinkedIn personal brand, engine.ai. Is where I'm building all the cool tools. If you want access to them, just send me a message and I'll get you in.
Nice. Amazing. But no, I appreciate you coming on, man. This was super amazing. I love vibing on just random shit. And hopefully we can cut it up into something that's impactful, but I don't care. I just want to have good conversation.